I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
67 degrees, partly sunny skies at O'Hare. Next news at 8:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Build business with Chamber 630, one of the largest business organizations in DuPage County. Marketing your business and connecting clients is their priority. Visit chamber630.com or call 630-968-4050 to join today.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Yesterday, Will County authorities held a press conference to provide information to the public on the gruesome findings that we've been discussing for the last several days. The remains at the home of Dr. Klopfer, this abortionist who died in September and whose house was the location of more than 2,200 medically preserved fetal remains.
Yeah, we're the first ones to tell you what was inside the cardboard boxes. Each plastic bag contained a fetus. Some were late-term abortions. Some were within the first 3 months. But he took the fetuses, preserved them medically, and then put them in these boxes. But the boxes were stacked from floor to ceiling. And there were, are you ready for this, though? This is what we learned yesterday. These abortions were just from 2000 to 2002.
So 3 years and a body count of 2,246.
At that location.
Right.
Because he owns other properties. He owns a home in Clarkston, Michigan that authorities are going to go through. And what's really disturbing, 15 yards behind his abortion clinic in Gary, Indiana, is a huge storage area that he has, that they have yet to go through. And they're afraid that there's going to be thousands of more aborted babies inside that. Again, my source told me that it was the most horrific thing they've ever seen. And repeating that with Sheriff Mike Kelly.
31 years that I've been doing this job, I've never seen anything like this ever. There were hundreds and hundreds of boxes that we had to go through to make sure there were no more.
And also we learned yesterday he performed abortions on 13-year-old girls and even 10-year-old girls.
He had mentioned during one of his testimonies that he had done an abortion on a 10-year-old girl, and this is public information, in Illinois. And the uncle had raped the child, and they did the abortion, and the parents took her home, and no one reported it.
Yeah, he had a duty to report. That was one of the reasons why the Indiana Medical Board took his medical license.
But the thing that they don't know, and we don't know, and he can't tell us because he's dead, is why he stored all these fetuses for years and years.
It's hard for us to speculate on that simply because it was from 17 to 19 years ago on what, and without being able to talk to him, obviously, because he's deceased, it's kind of tough for us to even speculate what his motivation was to bring him there.
I mean, because you do, in the state of Indiana, there is a law that says you either have to bury the fetus or cremate the fetus, and that does cost money. But on every bag, Dan, was the mother's name and the date of the abortion.
Yeah, I mean, the motive stuff is the least interesting or important thing to me about this topic. What do you think his motive was? You think it's going to turn out, if we could talk to him, you think it was going to turn out to be a redeeming motive? You think it was going to be, oh, now I understand?
Well, he's
no,
crazy. I mean, this
not.
is him in 2016 at his hearing.
We're all human beings. We all make mistakes, and we have to deal with the consequences, okay?
Yeah, he just made a mistake.
Yeah.
Please. It's ghoulish. And then now they're transporting all these fetuses. And my friend told me that they're filling it's a semi-truck, Dan, full of boxes and fetuses that they're moving from that home in Crete to the state of Indiana.
2,246. That's a big number. Turns out big number.
I mean, we couldn't even be in this room if all those fetuses were here.
I go back to the words from Ross Dothat, New York Times, that we discussed yesterday with Andrew Clavin. And Dothat particularly taking out after Mannequin Pete from South Bend, since one of the abortion mills was in Pete's hometown there, where he's mayor. Writes Dothat, Klopfer establishes the most visceral of contrasts between the mysticism required to believe that the right to life begins at birth, which is the position of the Democrat Socialists, including Mannequin Pete, between the mysticism required to believe that the right to life begins at birth and the cold and obvious reality that what our laws call a non-person can still become a corpse. What our laws call a non-person, that's what we have in Klopfer's properties are a bunch of non-persons according to the law, certainly as the left sees it, don't we?
I'm telling you, this is putting a different face on the abortion issue because it's so good, but it's so real.
Those are a bunch of non-persons, and yet they're corpses. They're a bunch of non-persons, and yet you have the sheriff saying, I've never seen something so horrific in my 31 years as a law enforcement officer. Boy, it's tough to square that circle, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And no misinterpretation of a verse from Genesis is going to do it for you there, Mayor Pete. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Dr. Kathi Aultman. She is a board-certified OBGYN, fellow of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and she recently testified on the Hill. We want to talk to her about that. Dr. Aultman, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Oh, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Morning. So how did you react to the news of Dr. Klopfer and what he was hoarding, particularly in the context of Gosnell and, amid suggestions, including by me, that you legitimize a ghoulish business and you are going to get ghouls. And Gosnell and Klopfer are not one-offs, I think we'll find over time.
Yeah. I wasn't disturbed, I don't think, as much as many people were. It's more disturbing that many babies were aborted. The fact that he did that just gives us a window into the mind of the abortionist. But his attitude was, that they were not persons. So, he had no qualms about aborting them. So he had no qualms about storing them, especially if it was costly to dispose of them properly. But he didn't see them as persons, so he saw no problem.
Do you see this, though, changing the way, common Americans look at the abortion issue?
I hope so. I hope it makes it more real. It's amazing to me to speak with people and they'll say, oh, well, abortions are only done in the first trimester. Or, that just doesn't happen, especially with babies born alive. Oh, that doesn't happen. I'm just hoping that this will bring more light to the problem and the fact that these are little people.
You testified on legislation regarding that latter matter of babies that are born alive. You testified on behalf of the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. And what is it that you wanted to and did communicate to legislators on the Hill?
Well, I think the first thing is that this law or this act is not about abortion. This act deals with babies that survive abortion. It does not put an impediment in the way of abortion. It simply protects babies, if they survive abortion, from being discriminated against just because they were originally slated for abortion and were unwanted. And the act would require that the medical personnel treat them with the same care that they would any other baby born at that gestational age, and that they be transported to the hospital. And one of the things that I brought up at the hearing was that this also protects medical staff, because as I was doing some research for the hearing, I realized that, or I came across several stories of nurses who were devastated by the fact that they had to watch these babies die, and the abortionist would not allow them to call for help or resuscitate the babies or anything. And several of them left the abortion industry after that because they just couldn't stand it.
Yeah,
so
left nursing
this would
after.
Protect people.
Yeah, left
We
nursing
have
after that, like Jill Stanek at Christ Hospital here in Chicagoland, who was one of those medical professionals of whom you speak.
Right, exactly.
So what happens if the abortionist or doctor fails to to do this, to provide aid and care to the child once it's born.
He becomes governor of Virginia.
There are criminal penalties for doing that and for not reporting, but there are no penalties for the woman, for the mother.
I wanted to address. I'm not sure if we did last time you were on the show, but I think these are always so important. We've had Dr. Tony Levatino on the show before, and he's talked about his conversion on the issue of being somebody who conducted abortions to somebody who would not do that anymore. You're in the same camp on that score, and I wonder what your conversion moment or story was.
Mine was a little more dragged out. The beginning was after I delivered my own baby. I think I made that baby fetus connection, and even though I had done abortions while I was pregnant, almost to term, after I delivered my baby and went back, I realized that I could no longer continue to do abortions. The fact that the baby was unwanted was no longer enough justification for me to kill it. It wasn't until later, though, when I saw in my practice young women doing actually very well after keeping their babies. Their lives weren't destroyed the way I thought they would be. And then seeing other women who'd had abortions and seeing the consequences of those abortions physically and psychologically, that I began to question whether abortion should be I'm sorry. It's early in the morning here.
Sure, yeah.
I began to question my views on abortion.
So
and finally
it
was someone giving me an article that compared abortion to the Holocaust. And I realized the reason that they could do what they did was because they didn't consider their victims as human beings, just as I did not consider my victims as human beings.
She is Dr. Kathi Aultman, board-certified OBGYN, fellow of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists.